you for agreeing to be on the platform today. And we're looking essentially at why leadership principles do not work in Sub-Saharan Africa, why leadership principles do not work in Sub-Saharan Africa. You are most welcome.
Thank
Do
you.
you want to tell us? Thank you. Do you want to tell us just a little bit more about yourself before we go into the topic for today?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for the privilege of being on this platform. I've been a guest here a couple of times and watched a couple of speakers share their knowledge, and it's been quite interesting. And it's also commendable, sir, that you have created this platform at such a time like this to actually not just talk, but to enlighten, to also enrich people across the world in the major issues confronting our country and our continent. So my name is Toye Sobande. Pastor Ituah did a good introduction of me. Interestingly, I got interested in the subject of leadership through my father. His name is Stephen Toye Sobande, whom I dedicated my book to. It starts with the conversations that we have in our house, conversations about our conduct and conversations about the values that he is building for the family, especially where we do things to make the family proud. He commends us, and where you err, he lets you understand that this action or this attitude is not in alignment with our family values. I remember growing up, one of the conversations that I had with him, I went to bed very late that night because I was watching a movie over the night, and woke up quite late in the morning. And my dad looked at me and said, Sobande does not sleep their life away. You can't afford to sleep like this. In our family, we don't sleep like this. I grew up with that consciousness over the years, with my father emphasizing the need for us to take responsibility, the need to be selfless, the need to be interested in community development. I remember as a young chap, very young chap, I left our house to go and watch a political campaign. Little child, and at that time, the announcement was that Chief Obafemi Awolowo was coming to our environment, and it was coming to, his campaign train was going to pass by. So I left the house to go watch that campaign that day. And I can never forget the experience that, gave to me. So apparently my father saw the interest and started introducing me to books, autobiographies of the likes of Chief Obafemi Awolowo. I read Why We Struck. I read Because I Was Involved. I read a couple of books that introduced me to the history of Nigeria, that also gave me perspective as I developed and grew through the ranks. By educational qualification, I studied as a lawyer and practiced as a lawyer. But over the years, especially while I was even in college, I was privileged to establish a leadership school for my colleagues, where we began, that's at the Obafemi Awolowo University, we began to teach about leadership. I was involved in student union government. Prior to going to OAU, I had done a degree in accounting and finance. So at that level, I was a member of the student union body. I was quite interested in governance and leadership related issue from a very young age. I recall when AIT started, there was a program that was called It's Our Time. And the objective of the program kind of resonated with myself and my friends. So we went there and presented ourselves that we wanted to be part of the conversation. Why? Because we had a sense of responsibility towards the development of our society, towards changing and transforming Nigeria. And this has been my trajectory over the years. until I discovered that, okay, I could go to school apart from having real life experiences. I could go to school to learn and unlearn what I know about the subject of leadership. Because I realized that leadership wasn't just position, it wasn't occupying a role. It was just about taking responsibility on behalf of people and ensuring that the objectives people have are met. So that's how I got into leadership. I don't want to take too much time talking about myself. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are you based in Nigeria or are you out of country?
I'm out of the country at the moment. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you relocated out or are you just visiting out?
Oh, okay. I'm working with I'm doing a book tour at the moment. Okay. Right now, I started in the US where I launched my book. So I visited a couple of cities in the US where we held town hall meetings and leadership conversation around the book. So I decided also to take that to Europe as well. And I'm also discussing with a university in the United Kingdom right now on how to inculcate the content of the book as part of their curriculum, because I felt it was going to be relevant, not just to the academic community, but because they have a program called the Global Leadership Program, and they were interested in the non-Western context of leadership, which I was actually talking about in my book. So I was invited over for a meeting to deliver a couple of speeches here and there. And I also am working with a couple of Nigerian in Diaspora Association, both in the US here and in the UK, on starting a conversation on leadership. So basically, I've also planned to move around a couple of African countries because the central focus of the book is on Sub-Saharan Africa. So I've been moving around across like that to promote, market the book, and also to ensure that it gets into the hands of the right people who will do the right thing with the knowledge that I've and the research work that I've actually put here in the book. Yes, sir.
So what led you to write the book, and what is the fundamental essence of the book?
Thank you for that question. So I had this privilege where I had lived in London for a few years after my master's program, and I was working in the United Kingdom. So I had a vacation tour to Dubai, and I flew on the Airbus A380. It was a fantastic experience for me, and it was my first time of visiting Abu Dhabi. I was wowed by the experience. I was wowed by the beauty of that community. And this experience was about 12, 13 years ago. I was so wowed by it that I kept asking myself the question that, where did these people emerge from? How did this country come about? So, and because I was very passionate about Nigeria, I was very passionate about development, I found myself praying and asking God, I'm interested in transforming Nigeria. What is my place in changing Nigeria? What is my role in changing Nigeria? And intuitively, I came across this word about this gentleman called Daniel, who was in captivity at the time. And he said that whilst he was, looking at the history of his people, he understood by books the number of years their country was supposed to be in colonization for. He understood by books. And that thing struck me like a thunderbolt. I realized the questions that I have in my mind, the things that I'm aspiring to do, are actually contained in the book. So I started asking for books around how United Arab Emirates came to be. So I went to their library. I asked questions. So I kept reading everything that I could find there. I kept reading it. So I asked them a question. I said, is there a book or is there an autobiography about the leaders of the United Arab Emirates? And the guy said, oh yeah. So they gave me a couple of books and it was quite a good read. And the guy who attended to me said something. He said, you know what? That our leader, our sheikh, just wrote a book I said, really? He said, it's titled The Vision. I said, wow, he just wrote a book that I would like to read it. So he brought a copy to me, and I found out it was in Arabic. I couldn't read Arabic. So I asked him, can I get the English version? He said, oh, yes. So he said, but you have to go to the National Library in Dubai. You'll be able to get it there. So we drove about 2 hours, we got there, and I bought that book titled The Vision. Awesome book. Awesome book. It revolutionized my thoughts in a lot of ways. I've read many leadership books. I've been part of many leadership training. I've facilitated trainings myself. One thing that I have found about the attitude of leaders in countries that are progressive or progress-minded, that they have the consciousness of advancement, was the fact that their leaders could document their success stories. They could document the process. They could document the ideas, how it came to be, such that the documentation led to them being able to institutionalize whatever vision, whatever ideas that they had. And at the time, I moved back to Nigeria. And because of the nature of my work, I had cause to either travel on vacation to some African countries or go to these African countries for work, especially either to conduct a seminar, a conference, or leadership training. And I kept seeing a pattern across all the different countries. I kept seeing a pattern. So I asked myself, this pattern it's interesting. So I documented it. I wrote it as an article, and I was about publishing it. But a part of me felt this was more than an article. This has to be something deeper than this, because it was going to be very exhaustive. I had written over 3,500 words, and I felt like I could still write more. So I reduced it to that 3,500. I said, okay, let me publish it as an article. So instinctively, I decided to speak to a senior friend who happens to be the editor-in-chief of all of the national dailies in Nigeria. And I walked up to him, shared my ideas with him that I'm working on this article, I'm working on this, and this is what is on my mind. And when he saw the topic, the leadership need, why leadership principles do not work, he said, this is not an article, this is a book. You can't write everything and leave it in an article. It has to be a book. And I said, that's exactly what I'm thinking. He said, you have to go back and put this in a book. And that's exactly what I did. I went back and I decided that this is a legacy project for me. A legacy project, not to rant, to complain, to criticize, to condemn those who are in governance, but to be a part of the body of knowledge of those who want to correct what is going on, or those who want to offer solutions to what is going on. And I felt if I was to make it a legacy project, I had to be very objective. I had to be very clear-headed, not just throw around theories, not just throw around ideas, but ensure that it's practical enough, it's relatable enough, and it's such that I can improve on it in the future. Then the icebreaker for me was when I was speaking at the conference, and a crisis erupted at the back, and they asked me to come mediate. And it was a conference for young professional adults. And a gentleman who at the time was just going to turn 29, 4 months away, started the argument that we are not yet serious about transforming Nigeria. That if we were to transform Nigeria, we need to remove all the cultural artifacts that represent colonialism. And he said, for example, why do we still have Abat Macaulay Way as a major road in Nigeria instead of them to have removed the name? And everybody said, oh, what do you mean? He said, oh, Abat Macaulay is a colonialist. So why do we still have his name? And the argument started, and he said no. So he picked his phone and brought out a picture of Abat Macaulay to prove to his friends and said, look at his picture. Look at his mustache. This is a colonial master. And yet we still have his name here. If we are serious about transforming this country, we should remove the names of all these colonial masters. And people started arguing, and they were, So I got there and I said, really, Abat Macaulay is not a colonial master. He's not a colonialist. Abat Macaulay is a Nigerian. He is the grandson of the man who translated the Bible to Yoruba and Igbo language for us to be able to read. He's the grandson of the man who was sold out as a slave, got his freedom, and became a bishop. And that's the person we know as Samuel Ajayi Crowther. And it occurred to me that that young man at that age, 29, do not have any sense of history as to what Nigeria is about or where Nigeria is coming from. For him to have missed that important part of history, so I had to explain to him that, look, this very set of political parties that started in Nigeria with the Lagos Youth Movement was founded by the likes of Abat Macaulay and his friends. They were the ones who swept the first the electoral seats in Lagos. It was that same political party that metamorphosed from Lagos Youth Movement to Nigerian Youth Movement and later to NCNC, that Chief Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe was the General Secretary when Abat Macaulay was president until his death. So I realized that when I scanned through the conversations and the arguments on Twitter, the younger ones do not have any sense of history, or they have a distorted view of what completely happened years down the line. I felt, wow, I need to bring down some level of history and perception or perspective into the book, whilst I will avoid the controversial bits where the stories seems to be very awkward and there are a lot of negative emotions around it, but the ones that actually suggest and establishes the fact that there was a system of governance, there was a leadership structure that was existing before we had colonial infiltration into our system. And that system of governance had certain values, has certain important governance structure. For example, in the book, I alluded to the fact that we had a system of government with the Alafin and the Oyomesis that served as a legislative body to checkmate the excesses of a tyrannical king. A lot of people may not be conscious of that history, but I found that our younger ones are more interested in entertainment, they're more interested in trends than actually understanding our history, where we are coming from. And if you don't understand the past, you can't build the future. And those were part of some of the issues I documented in the book, along the line of also wanting the society to understand that there's a difference between the word leader and the word leadership. And I see that emotions run wide when people discuss leadership issues. For example, I've had a couple of people speak to me when they saw the flyer that I'm speaking to them, and their first deduction on my discussion or suggestion that they have for me on what to share had a lot of political ideas and political notions. And I keep telling people, politicians are not necessarily leaders. The fact that somebody occupies a political office does not necessarily make them a leader. And I said, being a leader is different from leadership. They are two different words, and the definition, the implication of the words have different operative perspective to it. So all these were the things that I also captured in the book, and to also explain to us that whilst we have very high hopes and high expectations regarding transforming our country, transforming our continent, we must also understand that this will not be a quick fix. The decadence did not happen in 4 years. The decadence did not happen in 8 years. The decadence happened over time. And we also require a systemic approach to resolving the problem of leadership in our world. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very, very much for that and lending yourself to this volume of research. So what are the leadership principles that generally work? What sort of leadership principles from your own experience are the kinds of leadership principles people should follow? And then going on from there, if we establish these principles, why do they not work in Sub-Saharan Africa?
Thank you, sir. When we look at the history of the nations, for example, in Sub-Saharan Africa, we have about 46 countries. 46 countries with about 1.2 billion people population. Huge number, a significant number. And they all had similar historical antecedents. And these were some of the things I captured in my book. The colonial experience that they had served as an interference in the existing political structure of those nations. They had their system of governance. They had their system of leadership, which was peculiar to their culture. However, when this interference took place, the guys who came in to take over the system constructed the leadership model in such a way that it was extractive, it was economic based, and it only served the interest of the colonial masters, such that they can source materials, raw materials in all of these African countries, ship it back to Europe, and run their own factory, run their own industries. So by extension, those countries were just an extension for economic advantage only. Of course, after the World War, particularly World War II, when Germany lost their grip on most of the territories that they occupied, of course, we know the history of how they sat down, shared the land among themselves, based on their trade routes, based on the trade route and the convenience they had to be able to do the extraction of the economic materials that they wanted, or the raw materials that they wanted, and take it back to Europe. So, 100 years of colonization with a governance system that did not take cognizance of the people's cultural context had resulted into a distortion that had created a rail track that we are still battling with till today. A rail track that we are not even sure of which system of government is appropriate for us. For example, Nigeria. At independence, we adopted the British model of governance. We had the parliamentary system. After a while, we jettisoned it and we picked up the presidential system, which we've been running. And we've been doing a lot of copying and pasting of different system of governance, different constitutional model till date, and it seems not to have worked. The question is, are there issues with those principles, or are there issues with us as a people? My answer often is that while those system of government or system of governance worked in the context of the people who originated them, the application and the context is different in our own environment, completely different. For example, I have had people argue severally about what is best suited for us in Africa. And people say, oh, what we need is a transformational leadership. What we need is a transformational leadership in Africa. And I like to be a contrarian in my orientation. I like to analyze, review things, and critically look at it from a broader perspective. So, whilst it sounds very lofty to idealize the implementation of a transformational leadership, because when you look at it singly from just the literal interpretation, you would think it's a workable process, isn't it? You would think, oh, transformation, that means the leader will come and will transform everything, things will change. It doesn't work that way. We have seen so many people come with transformation agenda, transformation this. We have seen so many people come around in our system of government, throw so many terminologies, servant leadership, this, that, and they throw it around. But the reality is this: our cultural context will always truncate the process. Like a popular management expert says, he says, no matter how powerful your leadership objectives or strategies are, he said, culture is so powerful that it can eat your vision for lunch. Culture is so powerful that it can eat vision for lunch. So we have had so many fantastic transformational, programs, vision, national objectives, federal character. We've had so many government policies that have showed up over the years. They have not worked because we have a peculiar cultural orientation that is so strong that truncates the effect or the ability to implement those systems of government successfully. So do I now say, oh, all of these principles of leadership will not work in Africa? None of them. I'm not saying so. I'm saying that sometimes when we want to implement or adopt any of this leadership model, we have to first of all look inwards. Number one, I was discussing with somebody who called me up. I said, we need to first start with 5 critical areas that I have identified. Number one, our semantics. When people discuss leadership in this country, the natural inclination of discussing leadership is towards political office holders. And we shift responsibility away from ourselves to someone who is occupying an office for a term of either 4 years or 8 years. And we classify that as leadership. Nigerians are very passionate about Nigeria, passionate about everything Nigeria. And you will see from the argument, when I read newspapers online, the first thing I do, I go to the comment section when I see how Nigerians are abusing themselves, talking down on themselves. Then they bring issues that are not even relevant to the discussion in the newspaper. Then you now see the issue of religion coming. You see the issue of ethnic issues coming in. Now, with the people that have that kind of mindset, you can't just dump any leadership profile or any leadership system on them. And some people wonder, oh, this emphasis on culture eats vision for lunch. What is culture? Means the prevailing mental model of a people. Culture is behavior. Culture is behavior. No matter how powerful your business model is, this same principle is applicable not only to organizations, it's applicable to families, it's applicable to government institutions across board and globally. That if you do not take care of the prevailing mental model of a people in any organization, in a society, they will run down every idea, every objective that you have. So our semantics have to change. A political office holder is not necessarily a leader. They occupy a position, but does not necessarily make them a leader. So I say politicians are not leaders. So when we are discussing leadership, let's discuss leadership, not politicians. Number 2, whilst we do that, we need to erase that consciousness, that idea that politicians are leaders. We need to move on to the fact that our current political structure cannot produce leaders and does not produce leaders. Our current political reality is not structured to produce leaders, and it cannot produce leaders. Our cultural model is this. People like title. Africans like title. We attribute a lot of importance to title and to office. And that's why you see that you meet somebody and if you ask them what is their name, the first thing is they tell you their title. The title is not the name. That shows you the mental model of the person you are relating with. Now, when you don't address them by their title, they get offended. Why? Because they brought that title from heaven and they are going to their grave with the title. It's so prevalent. It's not only those who are called chiefs. It's not only those who call themselves chief, Lagbaja, chief this. Even those who have doctoral titles, that is honorary, that they never wrote a thesis one day in their life for. They never read any research book. They've never even finished any book from start to finish. They've never written an article, are busy gallivanting across the street with the title doctor. When you build a leadership model with a mindset like that, you cannot produce effective leaders. And you cannot have effective leadership in a society with that kind of mental model or behavior. It is not even enough. This also is reflected in the institutions that should sustain the values that upholds effective leadership in our society. Institutions like the church, where we have a fantastic opportunity to model the Christ-like way of leadership, Christ model of leadership. Rather, we have thrones constructed as seats for the emperors in our religious institutions to sit on. And we do not understand that these thrones that are constructed, that our religious emperors sit upon, communicates something to the people they are leading. And this is an institution that should revolutionize people's thinking, should structure it in a way that is in alignment with God's word, with God's counsel, with God's attitude, with humility. But we see people play God. And you now want to build a leadership system on that kind of culture, it's not going to work. It will not succeed. Why? Because, like I said earlier, culture has the capacity to eat vision for lunch, sir. And I'm saying that because when we look at it from an institutional perspective, the institutional framework that makes this nation a nation, that gives us the ability to stand and to function, it has been so weakened to the extent that it cannot sustain anything meaningful or progressive for us as a nation. Let's look at one of those. Let's look at two critical institutions. Let's look at our educational institution and let's look at our religious institution. For the past 30 years, we have consistently debated the issue of our educational structure. On the newspaper every day, there is always one negotiation with ASU. We are for salaries or for this. We are talking about now. One of the things that I captured in my book, and permit me to read this out, is that I say this a lot, that, and people wonder why I emphasize it. And I said, any nation that is serious-minded about transformation, any nation that is serious-minded about development will take its education very, very serious. Very, very, very serious. And I said that because when the Europeans left, when they colonized us, the educational model they gave us was to develop a factory model. It was developed after a factory model where we just produce people who can read and write and do basic clerical functions. You can contest that, but to some extent, you will agree with me that the educational model that was handed over to us was just such that they can produce people who can read and write and serve as clerical assistants, clerical position only. And that has been the educational model we've been running with since independence. Our educational model is not structured towards creativity, scientific research, innovation, or generating ideas that will produce economic value for us as a nation. That important institution, sir, as long as it is structured as a factory line to produce people who would rather be reactionary than to respond, we will remain where we are in terms of the effectiveness of our leadership. And that's what gave room to the fact that private institutions are being set up on a daily basis in order to run away from that problem. What am I saying? Our current educational model, curriculum, is not structured to produce an exceptional Nigerian that can compete globally and intellectually. It takes the extra effort of parents at home to tutor, to expose their children to solid educational knowledge, solid background. I went to a public school. I didn't go to a private school. But I cannot take the risk right now of sending my children to a public school in Nigeria, no matter how patriotic I want to be. it will be suicidal.
But a minute, Toye.
Yes, sir.
Yes, the British in 1959 or 1960, when they were leaving,
yes, sir,
gave us a warped educational structure and all that.
Yes, sir.
But first of all, our leaders in 1960, were they aware of this, and so on and so forth? And our subsequent set of leaders or politicians or military leaders, what then have they done about it? We're talking 60 years since, or 61 years or 62 years since independence now. Yes, what have they done about it? So what do we do? And then if they have not done anything about it, what do we now do about it?
Exactly. Thank you, sir. So currently, the reality is that societies that have progressed in terms of education did so as a joint partnership between the private sector and the individuals who were interested in that sector. If we wait, or if we keep waiting for government, especially as our current structure, to fund education, they will not do anything. If we study the budget of most successive governments in the last 20 years, in comparison to the required standard of UNESCO, of the percentage of the funds that should be made available for our educational system, you will see that it is always very low. Always very low. When I studied the educational model of the Western world, I found out that most businesses were the ones funding the school by commissioning research, identifying gaps, societal gaps, funding research projects. For example, in the area of malaria, they commission a research work. In the area of cancer, they commission a research work. The society in the Western world is structured towards awareness and funding, crowdfunding, to support a particular cause that benefits humanity, and there they inculcate that into the curriculum. How do I mean, sir? At the university level, the universities were not just set up for people to earn degrees and certificates like we have here. The main objective, Alibaba put something up on his phone yesterday, on his WhatsApp status, and I was watching the video of how an interview was being conducted by one of the schools in the South in Nigeria. And they were asking the students what degree they were going to earn. And some of them said BSc. And they said, okay, so what is the full meaning of BSc? 90% of the people they asked that question did not know what BSc is. So, how many organizations in Nigeria, sir, the big organizations, I don't want to mention them, how many of them are funding research work in Nigeria to solve a major problem that can generate economic value for us through our educational system? That is the structure in the Western world. And that is the solution that I think is required globally. And that's what people are doing. Dubai is injecting funds into research, into scientific and technological research, such that they will be less dependent on the Western world. Here, we are busy shouting that the West should do transfer of technology for us. It's like going to school. I earned my degree as a medical doctor. You are now asking me to transfer my certificate for you to be able to practice as a medical doctor. It's not workable. It's not possible. So the way forward, sir, is for government policies to be such that individuals, corporate institutions, as part of their social responsibility, as part of their taxing structure, should invest funds, legacy projects into critical issues in the society that requires research, either in the medical sector, either in the legal system, either in any sector, whether manufacturing, whatever it is. When they fund those research projects, when they fund those institutions, it has economic value that it will add to the nation on the long run. It will add, not only benefit their own business, it will benefit a major part. And that's the major multinationals in the Western world. That's what they do. The Amazons, the pharmaceutical companies, the AstraZenecas, they go around funding projects like this in the educational system rather than just wait for government to fund this project. I think that's one critical area Nigerians need to begin to talk about. Funding for those institutions, not just a one-time gift. 2 years ago in the US, I met a family whose mother died, and she left about, every year, she left a legacy fund of about $6 million for a school. $6 million for, I think it's a secondary school. Every year, the school, from the inheritance, they get $6 million into that school. All the rich men in Nigeria, and this is not to encourage any sense of entitlement in anybody. You know, people have worked hard, made their money, they have a right to choose what they want to do with it. But can we encourage people like that to develop scholarships, to develop funding such that we can support that institution? That way, we can be able to produce the right and the quality kind of people. A lot of us on this platform are employers of labor. You will agree that it is so difficult to recruit a graduate in Nigeria now. Extremely difficult. It is these institutions that help people develop the right work ethics. We're not even talking about the ability to write and read. We are talking about ethics, work ethic that people can bring on board, where they can see themselves not as an employee, but they see themselves as a problem solver. They see themselves as a strategic business partner to the business to ensure that the objectives and the vision of the business is achieved. We don't have that. We can only get that through the educational system. That is one area. I brought those two institutions in, that particular institution. I think I took a lot of time talking about the educational institution, because when you see the thinking pattern or the ability of an average Nigerian to argue or to distill an issue, you will wonder what is the value of education, whether that person went to school or not. So going to school is not about being able to read and write. It's being able to generate ideas. It's being able to have a culture that refines you, that makes you exceptional, that makes you unique, where you can discuss things intellectually without being abusive, without being condescending, with, you know, all of those. That's the basic function of education. I don't know how true it is, but I recently learned that somebody who is occupying a political office in this country was engaged in a conversation and in a negotiation as to how to address the issue of ASU strike, and he walked away. He walked out of the room, and that is somebody who is in charge of the education. Now, that is a behavior, that's a mental model. What is that behavior showcasing to people who will come tomorrow to occupy a similar position, or people who are watching or who are working with him? So the issues are interwoven, but I want to restrict, because sometimes when we try to analyze Nigeria's problem, it's so complex that it can become overwhelming and it can become very paralyzed. It can be paralytic, it can paralyze one. But I don't want to go into all of those problems. My assignment today is to ensure that I have a solution. Number two, sir, the strongest institution in Nigeria right now, is the religious body. Nigerians are highly religious that people literally worshipped. Pastor Ituah, this is not out. I'm not out to disrespect anybody. I'm not out to disrespect our religious leaders. But I'm trying to push out the fact here. And I know people go online to bash pastors, bash imams, and say all sorts of negative things. They have no clue as to how. But I think, for example, because I'm a Christian, I think that Nigerian churches they are positioned to be so, they are positioned with a fantastic opportunity to revolutionize this country. And how do I mean, sir? The quality of messages that comes from our pulpit has a way of shaping people's mental model. The quality of instruction, the quality of discipleship. Because I keep asking myself a question, sir. We go for church conferences. The anointing is so powerful. People fall down under the anointing, even though I don't know whether that is biblical or not. And yet, right after the ministration, just at the car park, we are contesting for road. And there's no fruit of the Spirit in us to be patient, to allow the other person to go, then it will be my turn later. And we are struggling to take the road. And we want to build a leadership model on people with that kind of orientation, who the anointing did not have any impact in their life, to know that patience is a virtue and is a fruit of the Spirit, that when I'm driving on the road, I should be patient for the other person to go. And people get down in the premises of the church and they begin to rain abuse upon themselves. And you wonder whether you are in a church or you are somewhere else.
Are you talking about my church car park?
No. I dare not. I dare not, sir. I'm just trying to address that the volume of people, because I'm amazed at the monthly programs we have in my
We'll send the anointing to the car park. There's no
the amount of people that go for vigil. Recently, yes. I'm doing a project of a house, and I engaged somebody to do the project. And the person saw my surname, and he was so excited that, oh, we share the same surname. I said, oh, that's interesting. Okay. Then I realized that the job he was meant to do was just to take 1 hour, 2 hours, fill a form, submit it, attest on the form, and attach your certificate and let it go. And it was taking 1 week. And I called him, oh, that what's going on, that my work has not been done. He said, oh, sir, sorry, sir. You know, Baba Debo just turned 80. So we've been in church for the past 3 days. That's why I could not do your work. I've been in church. I said, I paid you so much money, hundreds of thousands of naira to get my work done. And you are telling me you went to church for 3 days and you left my work. Jesus Christ. I said, but if I should react, the name they will call me is that I'm an unbeliever. That don't mind that man is an evil man, does not believe in God. But what kind of irresponsibility is that? That I paid you so much money on a Tuesday to get work done for me. And by Monday, the following week, the job has not been done. And you are telling me you went for church activity for 3 days. I couldn't wrap my head around it. And we have so many of that Christians speaking in tongues will be the ones to go late to the office. Christians speaking in tongues will be the one to sign resumption at 9:13 and they will write 8 o'clock. Christians will be the one who will call their colleagues and say, is a guy in the office? I tell Oga say I'm around. I just went down there to just go and polish my shoe. I went to go and repair my shoe. Christians are the ones who the office has a timer for everybody, and they will give the security their card and say, when it's 8 o'clock, help me sign in. And they will still be sleeping in their house. We can't build a leadership structure or a leadership style on a mental model like that. People that have not allowed the word of God to transform their hearts, to transform their life. Because sometimes when I'm in a church environment, I'm looking at people's head, especially when they are speaking in tongues. I spend time looking at their head and wondering what is running through this head. What is running through this head? I'm expecting that somebody who goes to church and has a relationship with God and pray should have something that is different about them, should have something that is unique about them, that others will want to follow, should have a leadership model, should have a sense of influence about them, that somebody will look at you and say, let your light shine, so that those who see your light shining, they may glorify their Father. So I'm wondering, why have we not succeeded in transforming this nation all this while? And I limited it to those 2 things as part of my own commission in my generation, the educational sector and those of us in the religious sector. The last one I'm working on is in the business area, because I realize economics or money will always control the narrative of politics. We cannot run away from it. It's a global phenomenon. So I think we have come to a time where Nigerian religious leaders need to begin to exemplify and model the leadership that we want to see in the governance structure of this nation, so that we will have the moral right to query our leaders. The way a pastor runs his church tells a lot to a church member who is observing that pastor, the way the church member will run their business. If the pastor is autocratic and you talk down on people and you spend time preaching about money, about material wealth and acquisition, rather than give people values and virtue to live with, how then do you expect to perform when they get to their workplace on Monday? How then do you expect them to perform when they get to political offices? We can't hold them accountable. There's no accountability. When we don't demonstrate transparency and accountability in the church structure, what moral right do we have to call our politicians to demonstrate accountability and transparency? That's why it's been very difficult to have any strong leadership model implementable in this country. There's no modeling. Sir, I grew up with identifying role models. Today, a big tout in Lagos is writing a book. I'm asking myself, who do I tell my son that this is a leader with a model in life after? Who do I tell my son? What do I tell? How do I project the right value system to my children when they leave the house, go to school, and all that they can see, both in church, on the street, and in the entertainment world, are things that are against the ethical values that I'm trying to inculcate into them in the home? So these critical issues form our behavior. They form our orientation. And we now wonder why we do not have an effective leadership structure. When a man cannot take care of his family responsibly, school fees, men will not pay. And yet, we will do millions and thousands of naira to entertainment and to all other frivolous activities. I tell people, the way a man talks to his wife at home goes a long way in the kind of son your boy will grow up to be as a man. If you are very authoritative, you are autocratic, you are very condescending, you are abusive towards your spouse as a man at home, watch your son, watch how he's going to grow. He will take that orientation, that model from the home, he will take it to the school. He will take it to the society. If that boy with that kind of negative orientation becomes a business owner, he will run his business like that. He will abuse everybody under him. Now imagine that boy becoming a politician and being a governor. What do we expect? Or being a minister? He will go to sex shop and be slapping attendants and nothing will happen.
You seem to know one who has.
I read it in the newspapers. I just read it. I've never even met any of them. So it shows, because the value systems we are expecting from our politicians, and we are calling them leaders, start from us in the way we run our family, in the way we raise our daughters, in the way we raise our sons. We are expecting breakthrough at the top, but we do not understand that the leadership model that will become the aggregate component of the society that we want to see transform starts from our homes. It starts from the kind of leadership I was privileged to have a father who modeled integrity, modeled honesty, and called me out anytime I failed. I'm grateful to God for that. And that's one legacy that I took away from my father. That thing about the demonstration of love, showing me love, showing myself and my siblings love, emphasizing the importance of... I grew up with something that my mom used to say to us. And it's very interesting. I say this a lot to a lot of my friends. My mom says things like, I'll say it in Yoruba, then I'll translate in English. She says, meaning, don't think about yourself alone. Don't think about yourself alone. Think of others. And I remember an instance where my brother got back from school and went straight to the kitchen and packed rice, took meat, took everything, put it in his plate, and he was walking to the dining area. And my mom said, that food only for you? Do you realize that your dad has not eaten? Your sisters have not eaten. Your brothers have not eaten. If you alone eat all that, what will the rest of us eat? The thing hit me like thunderbolt. Why? I grew up with my mom saying that thing a lot. I used to assume she was just nagging. But when I grew up, I became mature. I understood that was a fantastic leadership model she was trying to inculcate into us, being considerate of others. Leadership is representative in nature. It is representative to the extent that you are able to give consideration for the interest and the needs of others. Why we have irresponsible leadership is because we have men and women who are not considerate of people. In our churches, in our mosques, in our schools, we have a bunch of leaders who are irresponsible. All they think about is themselves, not the next generation. I'm not here to lament, sir, but I'm just here to emphasize that that is a critical value system that is missing in our culture. Consideration for people, consideration for the next generation, consideration for the future of the unborn child. And what we realize is that the average politician is concerned about consolidating their political gains, not the next generation. I tell people, when a politician walk up to you and they are campaigning, ask them just two questions. What is your purpose in being in leadership? And what will be your leadership legacy? Ask the average politician. They have no clue. And I'm not here to bash politicians. That some of them are good. Some of them have some virtue. Some of them have some value systems that are ideal. I don't want to join the train of, pushing politicians. And politicians are not our problem, sir. What the summary of my book is saying, as per the leadership myth, is that our semantics of leadership and leader has to change for us to get the right leadership in place. Leader is different from leadership. And leadership is, okay, for example, this is my definition of leadership, sir. Leadership is a relationship between leaders and followers with a bilateral agreement that sets out a vision at the beginning of the relationship. And they jointly decide on a trajectory and the transitional dynamics between the actualization of that vision and the work requirements that satisfy the interest of both the leaders and the followers. The summary: leadership is a relationship. In the context of this definition, sir, I went further. I said, leadership is taking responsibility. Leadership is taking responsibility for the relationships between the leader and the followers. What established leadership is the relationship between leaders and followers. There cannot be leadership where there are leaders and there are no followers. And like I said earlier, leadership is representative in nature. So let us now come home and put the Nigerian situation in context, or the African situation in context. In the context of this definition, do we have leadership in Nigeria? In the context of the definition that leadership is a relationship between leaders and followers with a bilateral agreement, mark my word, relationship between leaders, followers with a bilateral agreement that sets out a vision at the beginning of that relationship, and they jointly decide on a trajectory and the transitional dynamics between the actualization of that vision and the work requirements that satisfy the interest of both the leaders and the followers. When we analyze that definition in the context of Nigeria and in the context of most Sub-Saharan African countries, what we have is rulership, not leadership. What we have produced in the last 60 years of independence is rulership and not leadership. How do I know, sir? Check out the differences in rulership and in leadership. Leadership is representative in nature. Leadership works on agreement with people. Leadership works with vision. Now, when you look at all these basic indices, relationship between leaders and followers, there's a bilateral agreement that set out a vision at the beginning. In this part of our world, did we have any agreement with our political office holders, who are our rulers? Till date, was there an agreement of development and infrastructural development between us that is representative in nature? Do we have a vision that spells out the future that guarantees tomorrow for our children and our children's children? What is the trajectory and what are the transitional dynamics of actualizing this vision? What are the requirements, the competencies, the characters of the key players that will see to the actualization of these dreams, of this aspiration? Every day we hear the Americans talk about the American dream, the American dream. I've been asking, is that dream written in their constitution or in a book somewhere?
Okay, so let me ask Victoria very quickly, and then I'm going to open the floor for questions, because I'm sure that quite a lot of people, having heard you, must be brimming with questions. We're going to keep the questions very short, and I'd like you to also keep your responses short so that you can answer as many questions as possible. But what I want to ask you, and the area I want to point you at, is this is 2023 coming now. We have APC, we have PDP, we have different kinds of people aspiring to leadership in Nigeria. I want you to look into your crystal ball, keep it short and crisp also, and tell me what you think will emerge in terms of leadership options for us in Nigeria. That's question number one. What's going to emerge and what is going to happen, and so on and so forth. Question number two, these leadership contracts that you have just mentioned, how do we ensure that we extract from whoever emerges, either APC, PDP, or a third force that people are talking about? What would be the options? What would be ideal? What would be nice for Nigeria to have as we go forward? And then number three, how can we change the narrative? How can we get involved? What can we as individuals do? You know, it's okay to know what all the problems are.
Yes, sir.
The challenge I have with a lot of people who talk about Nigeria and talk about the problems is that they know the problems,
yes,
but very, very few people have any realistic suggestion as to what to do. Let me also warn you very carefully, because I've mixed a lot with our present leaders and political activists. They spend a lot of money and they plan many years ahead for whatever the outcomes that you see. The outcomes didn't start yesterday. You know, somebody was talking to me just today about structure. Different kinds of politicians who have different kinds of structures, who keep these structures, who oil these structures, who spend so much money trying to get to where they are. So the last thing on their mind is what the ordinary people want. The reason why they went into office is for themselves. They didn't go there spending all that money because they think that Toye would like to go back to public school or send his son to public school. No. That's not why they went into that business. Those ones ended in 1959, thereabouts, probably with Awolowo and people like that. You know, the whole narrative is totally different. So this is where we find ourselves in Nigeria. What I want from you, Oga Toye, is what are the solutions? What do we do? And how do we solve these things? I've asked you 3 questions. I want you to give very, very short answers to each one of them so that I can open the floor for other people to check you up.
Thank you, Pastor Ituah. The first one, for me, in my projection, I granted an interview to Guardian newspaper on January 1st. And these questions you asked me were the exact questions I was asked, and these were my answers. Number one, Nigerians should lower their expectations with regards to 2023. Nothing serious will happen. Nothing will change. We should lower our expectations. And I am
so who's going
that,
to become president in 2023? Which party?
I don't want to sound like I'm moving towards a political party and I have a bent or affinity with them, but the handwriting is on the wall. And when I say the handwriting is on the wall, I have not seen a serious contender from the opposition. I've not seen it. So there is a high chance the ruling party will continue. Who amongst them, I cannot guarantee now. They are favorites. And the body language is suggesting that there's a lot going on internally amongst them. And we can only be hopeful that they will implode, self-implode, for a third force to be able to show face, not necessarily win, show face and shake things a bit. With regards to the third force, they are not serious-minded yet. They are not ready. So it's third force on paper, third force by mouth. Any third force that I personally would take serious has to give me a 20-25-year plan, and I will support them. But to see that a third force will win election in 2023 or 2027, no. These things will not change in the next 4 to 8 years. We may have to repeat the wheel over and over and over again. And that's why I said Nigerians should lower their expectations. Number 2, how do we extract this contract? You nailed it, sir, for me. It's here in my notes that Nigerians are busy sleeping and we are chasing Naira and Kobo. These guys hold meetings 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And a lot of us are not even part of the political parties. But yet we go on social media, we go to church, we are praying every day, and we are not there where decisions are being made, sir. I recall that when I was at the Obafemi Awolowo University, sir, we were always sent home after one strike or the other. Then I realized that the guys who are responsible for why we were sent home go for Congress meetings. They attend congresses. They go for a student representative council meeting. So I decided, how come when they made those decisions were not there? And, you know, in those days, they just manipulate and come and lie. And the next thing, year one students will be the one that will fool amphitheater, who are ignorant, who don't know anything. And once they shout, Ile Lodu, everybody will be shouting, Ile Lodu, Ile, and we all go home. So I put a few friends together. We started with an ideology. Number 1, we have an objective for why we're on campus. We came here to study, and it is important we accomplish our objective. Every other thing is a byproduct. So we started visiting the Congress meetings and the Student Representative Council meetings. We're observing all the protocols. And because I was an experienced student union leader from a previous school, and I was also a member of the Student Representative Council, and I was a law student, I knew the antics. I understood the power play. So I created what I called a neutral force. And we began to sponsor people into the Representative Council. We began to ensure that people attended congresses. Then I was also privileged to be the president of a fellowship and a pastor, and I leveraged the population of my fellowship, which was about 1,000 plus at the time. I spoke critically on Sundays about the political events on campus. I addressed and I encouraged our students to run for office. I personally sponsored and I bankrolled a lot of elections, and I ensured that they won. But I stayed at the background, ensuring that there's a value, there's an underlining. Then the most important thing which we did was that we also got our people into the electoral system, so that when they went for Congress meetings and they went to the Student Representative Council and they were debating anything, our people spoke up. So in those days, whoever was the president, we were not hostile towards them. We related with them. We expressed our views, but that way we were able to have our voice. And I think that same approach is what people should take right now. My dad was an educationist, and he was a political appointee. Governor Bola Tinubu gave him an appointment then on the education board. And I remember as a young boy, by 6 a.m., people are lining up in front of our house waiting for appointments. And I asked my father, why would they say that's the life of a politician? When they hold meetings, my dad will be at meetings till 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And a lot of Nigerians just talk, and they are very ignorant of the dynamics of the politics, the politicians. To change things and to extract anything meaningful from politicians, we need to register in the political parties. We need to encourage our church members, people in our mosque, to attend political party meetings, whether it's 1 a.m., 2 a.m. I know a lot of us are career professionals. We are running businesses. We may not have the time, but let us have proxies who can attend. We can introduce technology like Zoom to be able to attend those meetings, or those political party meetings. We need to introduce data into the membership of those political parties. We need to understand the ideology of those Nigerian political parties do not even have any ideology that is clear right now. The last time I heard a Nigerian political party express any ideology was maybe in the 60s, and that's the socialist democracy by the action group or the UPN at the point. I still have the manifesto of UPN in my library. But how many Nigerians have access to the manifesto or to the constitution of these political parties? At the point in time in this country, PDP constitution was similar to AMPP constitution and AG constitution. Why? It was written by the same man, Bola Ige. The same typographical error. Maybe things have changed now. Things are likely to change, but we need to have access to it. If we don't have access to their constitution, if we don't attend their meetings, if we are not able to introduce our ideology and use our population, our strength, our financial resources, and put it into those political parties, sir, we cannot successfully extract anything meaningful from the politicians. To get anything meaningful out of them, we have to go into the political parties. We have to fund the political parties, particularly at the local level. We need to do Amala politics, sir. We need to do social, corporate social responsibility at the local government level, where the greater population of people are. And that's what the politicians are doing. They are oiling the machinery at the local level. If you're the number one mafia in Nigeria was recently suspended indefinitely. There's a political dimension to it, though. There's something political about it. Let's just watch as it unfolds. So,
who is that number one mafia that was suspended?
I think it's a gentleman. I don't know. They call him King or something.
Okay.
Somebody has written his name. Yes, sir. So there's a police that mafia 3 weeks ago called a meeting of his people planning for 2023 election and the implementation. They were giving people jobs, offices, cars, and salaries on how to. And yet, the way we give tithe and offering in church is the way I think we should give tithe and offering to political parties if we want to have a say in the political future of this country. We need to be able to fund the political parties.
So you've all heard it on the platform. We have to all get into these political parties. It's not enough just to sit here and have these conversations and have these conversations and have these conversations. These conversations will remain conversations unless there's some implementation. So everyone here should please see how they can get politically involved and not just putting pressure on the politicians. That's one. But if you're not inside on the dining table, you end up in the menu. So we all need to be in the dining table. We all need to be where they're taking decisions. As we are talking now around this table, some people are sitting in covens of APC, taking decisions, who will run, who won't run, suspending party chairmen because of their strategic thinking, waking up their structures, going back to their grassroots and things. And we're conversing. They're not bothering themselves with our conversation, because our conversation is not going to take decisions. Yes. The same thing they're doing in PDP. People are thinking ahead, people are spending money, people are paying people, people are deciding who's going to snatch what ballot box, people are deciding what the results are going to look like in the Okira, what they're going to look like in this and that and the other one. And we need to get involved. And if it's that we're going to form or join a third force, my friend Toye said, we're not serious. We're not serious at all. And nobody wants to bear the cat. Well, let's take questions from Mr. Tunde Akpelogun, my friend and my brother, Erabo Emokwae, and Stephen Palibo Lawson. Please unmute yourselves one after the other. Short question or short comment, straight to the point, and then we will take it from there. And then Osarume Akenzwa. We'll take those four very quickly, and then we'll see what to do next. Thank you very much. Tunde, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Toye.
Thank you.
I'm sure my friends have been calling me and praising how well you have presented this leadership context. My one question is, how should anyone hope that the trajectory that you are telling us about can change Nigeria based on the 1999 fraudulent and decreed constitution. Mind you, the states that were created were fraudulent. The population census were fraudulent. The number of constituencies created were fraudulent. Now, the people sitting in the House of the National Assembly will always be more in favor of the Northerners. So how can we, when we go to vote, change anything in Nigeria? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can I go ahead and answer quickly, sir?
Yes.
Like you rightly pointed out, sir.
Wait, just let them take the questions. Let them take all the questions.
Okay.
Let them take all the questions before you answer. A wrap up, please.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Pastor. Dr. Sobande,
yes,
my
sir.
question, I'd like to keep it as simple as concise as the pastor has asked us to, but things are a bit complex, and oftentimes we have to simplify. So this question of leadership, this forum itself is put together by a leadership group, African leadership group, addressing Nigerian leadership issues. We often say leadership, 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 and you've done a brilliant job of pointing out the problems of leadership and how there's an absence of real leadership. But I have often thought, and I think you began to address it in some way, that actually the problem is not leadership, although it is well understood that the fish rots from the head. Our problem, if you ask me, is that of the followership.
Yes.
So if you flip it around, if we spent as much time trying to improve the followership, educate them, make them more aware, as you indeed you did in university, engaged and all the rest of that, it'll be hard to hoodwink a populace that is aware, that is woke, as they say in America now. So I don't know what your comments might be in that regard as to shouldn't we be flipping this around and trying to deal with the followership? It's a tough task, no doubt about that. Democracy is not intended for uneducated, uninformed people, because all you're going to get is the rabble, making the decisions over the few who might know better. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Barre. Thank you very, very much. You're saying we should be looking also at the followership. What do we do with the followership and so on and so forth? Stephen Ikpalibo, please.
Yeah, thank you, Pastor Ituah. This is Stephen. You are my guest on NTA Business Matters. Dr. Toye. Great pastors. Quickly, sir. Dr. Toye Sobande, you said it. 2023 will just be another perambulating affair. The issue is this: we don't want to get involved, yet we want Uhuru in Nigeria. These people plan ahead and maintain their wheels of benefits. Do you think we can create a strategic movement of people who are committed to a code of ethics or a vision? Let's say 10% of Nigerians who will say we will do right always. With that help in terms of ensuring we are all participants in this whole governance agenda of this country? And secondly, in writing your book, did you consult the dual mandate by Lord Lugard, where in one of the chapters he actually, described the mindset of the average Nigerian, regardless of his ethnic orientation? Yeah. I'm wondering whether you did a consult, because if you had read Lugard's description of who the average Nigerian is in his dual mandate, it's still very much prevalent. So those are the questions I want to ask for now. Thank you, Pastor Ituah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll take Osarume Akenzwa, and then you can respond to those 4 questions, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, sir.
Osarume, please. Please unmute yourself, Osarume.
Okay. Good evening, Pastor. Thank you so much. Good evening, Dr. Toye. I work with a non-profit organization that targets or that tries to raise transformative leaders. And you've spoken today a lot about the model that we have, and you've talked about the cultural influence. When I think about the target group that we focus on, which is secondary, primary, and to a large extent, tertiary education. So students who are going through the current system of education that we have, and the influences that they even also have, not just from the society, but from their families, because I think at the end of the day, when we talk about the state of affairs in our country, they are enablers and they're also beneficiaries of, the current status quo. How do we, or what else can we begin to do in terms of changing or influencing the culture at that level for the younger people? I believe strongly that the leaders we have now, or the politicians we have now, in another 20, 30, 40 years, we have those in secondary or primary education at the moment. So what can nonprofits like us begin to do in terms of our programming, in terms of our projects, in terms of our partnerships, to be able to influence the next cadre of leaders, thinking long-term in Nigeria, not just in Nigeria, but on the continent? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Asarume. Over to you, Toye. Please respond to this question very quickly. We have another few.
I'll start with the 1999 Constitution. You are very correct, sir, that like Lord Denning said, you can't build something on nothing. We have a very weak political contraption, and it cannot produce any effective leadership system. And that political contraption is equally enabled by the current constitution. I was very excited when Mr. Dele Farotimi was here a few weeks ago, and he presented a draft constitution. I was part of a group some 4 or 5 years ago where we decided to start this work on transforming Nigeria. And we said we're going to set up a citizens club in secondary schools and in universities, because we were targeting people who were from age 12, 13, 14, way ahead of time, before any election year, so that we indoctrinate them, we acculturate them into the way of thinking, introduce them to books and all of that. Like someone said a while back, that the 1999 Constitution is so powerful that the Nigerian president can convert a man into a woman if he so desired. We can't do anything meaningful in transforming Nigeria with that constitution. And there's a lot of areas. For those of us who are lawyers, let me just pick one area, the Land Use Act. It's a major clog in the wheel of progress, economic progress for this country, until it is worked upon and changed. Whatever we are contending with politically is what we are going to be contending with economically, and it's going to be affecting every aspect of our lives. So, like you rightly said, we cannot change Nigeria if we do not change the constitution. How do we change the constitution? Let's go after those who are responsible for changing the constitution, not shout at them, not yell at them, not call them out only, but let's do what Mr. Farotimi did. Let's begin to draft. Let's begin to highlight critical issues in the constitution that is not progressive. Let's begin to bring them to the forefront, and let's begin to debate it now. Apart from the Land Use Act, the Procurement Act, I don't see how any government will do any infrastructure development successfully with the current structure of the Procurement Act. The derivation and revenue generation and revenue sharing formulas of whatever that we have currently, those are critical issues that shows how weak this political contraption is. So, must we wait for the Senate or the House of Rep to initiate the changes? No. Those of us who are very strategic can begin to break the constitution down into pieces and look at the areas. Then we now form advocacy groups, and we begin to champion conversations around those areas, and we begin to provide resources and champion new bills and sponsor them at the House and at the Senate. And if we can do that, we break the entire constitution down. It's not going to happen in 4 years. It's not going to happen in 8 years. But if some of us can take that as our political mandate, instead of running for office and thinking they will change Nigeria by running for office, I think that's the one thing we should do. Number two, I think we should restore history. And thank you for mentioning the Olufemi Ajayi. Thank you. I did it when I was in school. We used to call it, is it social studies or civic education or civic study or civic something? We should introduce it back to school. Those values, so how many Nigerians are aware of the constitutional provisions? How many Nigerians are aware of their rights? You know, I don't know, but I recall I visited the office of my senator once during the Bring Back Our Girls protest, and I wrote a petition at the time, and I visited the senator. The senator refused to see me. The senator refused to attend. I called her several times, telephoned her number, tried to push during the Bring Back Our Girls. But because I'm not combative, I could have gone ahead to want to embarrass her in social media and put it out there. But those are the issues that we have. We have leadership that is not responsive. But what do? We went to the street. We took a more progressive action. And of course, you know the story about it. So I think that's the same approach to the 1999 Constitution. So I agree with you. It's not workable. However, changing the Nigerian Constitution will not happen in one tenure. It will require a lot of advocacy. It will require work, and it will require a lot of funds. Educate. Number two, the followership. Yeah, thank you, sir, for saying that. I agree with you completely. That is what this book is about. I emphasized on the dimension of followership. I'm writing a sequel to this book, and it's on followership. And I just completed some about 5 scholarly articles on the followership implication of leadership. And I also just recently got an invitation to Washington, D.C. to speak on the non-Western perspective of followership. And I'm using Sub-Saharan Africa as my research studies for that presentation in Washington, because I think there will be no effective leadership if we have a set of irresponsible followership. And that's why I said that I took it back to the people, the responsibility people have to contribute to the kind of leadership, because the people end up being our leaders. They came from amongst us, isn't it? They came from our churches, they came from our mosques, they came from our tribes, they came from our religion, they came from our states, you know? So we used to have MAMSA, we used to have national orientation in those days, many years ago. You know, we used to have music that instilled certain cultural values that still grips my conscience till date. You know, I remember in those days where they tell you that when you are in the public bus and you see an elderly person, you must stand up for the elderly person to sit down. You can't try that with the younger generation. You saw what happened on social media where Professor Wale Soyinka sat down on somebody's seat in the flight. You saw how social media went awry over the fact that it was his seat, he paid for the seat, it was business class. They said the professor mistakenly sat on his seat. We don't know the details, we're all not there, but look at the argument online. You know, so I agree that this follows. So, and we have to do education on civic studies. You cannot. I have the privilege that my children, anytime they're on vacation, they do what we call summer school in the US. And during that 4-week, 6-week summer vacation school that they attend, they learn a lot about the American history. They learn a lot. And in fact, some of the videos and some of the things they give them, my kids still listen to it till date. They learn a lot. We have a bunch of followership that are frustrated, that are as corrupt, you know, more corrupt than those in leadership. And I used to have a friend who said when his brother-in-law became the senior special assistant to the vice president during the Jonathan era, the wife's cousins packed their load from their village and moved to Abuja to live with the in-law. And they said he doesn't need to do anything, that they will sort themselves out, that he just needs to give them accommodation that they'll be managing in his house. The guy was a pastor. So it was his first appointment in a political office. And he was stunned by the amount of phone calls and requests he was getting from family members and all sorts of people asking him for one favor or the other, including his uncles who took away his father's property and threw their mother out, calling him for a town hall meeting on how he should come and redo the burial ceremony of their grandfather, that their grandfather is not sleeping very well in his grave and his body has been groaning since. And that's why the family is in hardship. Like they position him very well, he sleeps very well, the family will progress. And the cost of the burial ceremony is 42 million naira. So when you have followership like that, or the head of the family or one of my friends who was a commissioner, who they called and told the Olori family head said his house is not befitting, that he should come and reconstruct his house as a problem. He's not a chief, he's not a king, he's a Olori of those family. And they said, so when you look at orientation like that, you see that we have a long way to go. A lot of us do not know our capacity for corruption until we take political office, until we enter into office. You will know the amount of evil that is in our society. So, number 3, strategic movement of people. Yes, my target is 20% of Nigerians. And why do I say 20%? Pareto principle. In any organization, 20% of the people in the organization are the ones that do the most effective work. 80% just goes through. 20% will work if we're able to mobilize 20%. And that ties it down to the 4th question. It's not a project of 4 years, 8 years. It will take 20 to 40 years. Like I said, the decadence is huge and is deep. It's deep. And that's why I said, let me use the one that I can relate with. Let's look at the church. Let's look at the church. Let's start strategic movement. Martin Luther King Jr. was a pastor of a church. He was a preacher, but he leveraged his opportunity as a preacher to shape the values in the society and address a national issue that brought about a transformation in America today. They dedicate a day to him, January 17th of every year, as celebration of the Martin Luther King Day. So do we have anybody in our religious sector who is willing to sacrifice their life, sacrifice their pulpits, sacrifice their family, sacrifice everything towards influencing the next cadre of leaders from the pulpit? That's the one I can relate with, where we can generate that mobilization of 20% of the Nigerian population in the next 20 years, where we can set up civic education institutes, we can set up leadership school, governance school, school of politics. Yes, I agree. Pastor Ituah has started the job. We can start all of that and start the movement on the road where, for example, the school my children attend in Nigeria, Pastor Ituah, they do elections for their prefects. They do election for their prefects in my children's school. My daughter got home one day and she was complaining to us that, Daddy, can you imagine, a young boy came to campaign in my class today. As at the time my daughter said this, I think she was 6 years old or 7 years old. I can't remember. My wife will remember. But this is the message. She came home and she was complaining about the person who came to campaign for head boy in her class and that she's not going to vote for the boy. And I said, why? She said, can you imagine? He's telling us that he's going to extend the break time and he's going to make sure that we don't wear school uniform every week. We are going to wear school uniform just 3 days in a week, and other days we will wear mufti to school. And he's going to, he will extend break time. Yeah. And she asked the question, she said, he doesn't have the power to do that. He's not the head of school. So why should he be promising things he cannot do? At primary school level, sir, some parents have tutored their children to give a political manifesto that is full of lies and treachery, thereby destroying what that school is trying to do. That school is trying to teach children civic responsibility of how to run for office, campaign for office, understand what it means to vote and be voted for. Another parent is somewhere there truncating that process by teaching their children to lie. So we have a long way to go. So my recommendation is for us to understand that it's a long-term project. We can't change it. Changing culture is changing people's way of thinking. And to change people's way of thinking, it has to be through education. Education through the pulpit, education through our music. I love Nigerian music. Our musicians are making a lot of money, but I'm afraid our music is producing and promoting cultism. I'm sorry, you forgive me for saying this, is promoting this quick, rich orientation, get rich quickly orientation. Is promoting this idea of drugs, is promoting this idea of prostitution, is promoting this idea of ritual killings. Why? Because what we display on the screen, the make-believe, is Once you do one song, you blow, then you'll be able to ride a Rolls Royce. You'll be able to join the 30 BG gang. You'll be able to wear gold wristwatch. You'll be able to, but look at the life the people are living, drugs, alcohol. Look at all of those that is going on. As people continue to listen to those songs, they continue to dance to those songs. Why we call it entertainment is actually indoctrinating people into a particular way of life. It's indoctrinating people. Recently, there was an argument over a leaked sex tape of one of the musicians, and people were fighting, and people were saying, I solidarize with this person, I solidarize with that person. And I'm wondering, we have lost our value system. These celebrities are supposed to stand as role models for children to be able to pattern their life after, not just only in the political sector. So it's so complex. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Toye. Thank you very much. You have asked me to become Martin Luther King. Now, what for you? You know the price he had to pay to have a day named after him? It's okay. We shall see how it goes. But one thing you can be sure of, I am determined to put in a lot of effort into making sure there's the right kind of leadership in Nigeria. And I know that it's a big, big sacrifice. It's a big sacrifice. And one of the problems in Nigeria today is that not very many people sacrifice anything for the sake of this country. They're not willing to give up on their comfort, their resources, their money making, their family time, even their personal time. And that's part of why Nigeria is what it is. Not enough sincere and serious people who are really committed to the Nigerian agenda, the Nigerian question. Anyway, let's not talk too much about that. The African Leadership Group is trying to be that movement that will put in a lot of pressure on people and government and followership. Number one, we want to encourage as many people as possible to get involved in politics and leadership. Number two, we want to sponsor as many as we can sponsor that we think are right to get involved. Number three, we want to educate people as to what the situation is in Nigeria, what the problem is, and what the solutions are. These three things we want to do. Number four, we want to serve as a pressure group on anyone who is being in government, either to pressurize them to do the right thing or to encourage them if they're doing the right thing, and to support them and provide resource and materials and information that will better help them govern. Number five, we want to individually as a group offer ourselves for service also where necessary. Okay, these five things the African Leadership Group is trying to do. And we want people to please try and register to be part of the group, to go on our website, our internet, and be part of the group. And they can join any of the subgroups that they like, you know, strategic planning committee, publicity committee, grassroots mobilization, social influencing, funding. We need a lot of money. If we're going to be sponsoring people to go into office, we need money for that. If we're going to be sponsoring people to educate, you know, we need to educate the electorate. It's one of the things that you said. We need to find ways of engaging them at grassroots and local government level so that they don't sell their votes for just 1,000 naira or 2,000 naira and so on and so forth. You know, we're not going to be a political party. We're going to allow people to go into whatever political party they want. But if there is any politician or political party that seems to have the right tone that we all agree with, we will mobilize support for that person for that particular engagement. Next engagement, it might be a totally different set of people, or it might even be different sets of people at different, going for different offices. We want to focus more on the person rather than the party, except, of course, if a party emerges that has all the bells and whistles. So we want people to walk the talk and join us. I want people to get their PVCs. It's very, very important. It's the biggest campaign now. Get your PVC, be ready to vote, be ready to protect your vote. And then you can visit the africanleadershipgroup.org to register. Okay, I'll repeat this again before we close. I just thought to throw that in so that everybody understands what we're trying to achieve. And we'll continue to have engagements like this with people like yourself who will be able to give us information as to what to do. We really want people to tell us what they think we should do so that we can try and do those things. We have 2 more questions, and those will be the last questions for today. Samuel Ahwere and Ernest Thomas. I want you, please, Toye, to answer those questions and then give your last words in the next 5 minutes. We need to get off the platform as soon as possible. So, Samuel, unmute yourself, ask your questions. Ernest, unmute yourself, ask your questions. I don't know if my co-president, Tony Enebi, would have anything to say before we close, and then we'll close. Ernest, go ahead, please.
Good evening, Pastor. Thank you, Toye.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry, you are one of the people that we sent home when we were in Ife. You agree that one of those times too, we need to go home and relax. Well, it was fun. And now also, my question is, how do we get, now the citizens are losing interest in the entity called Nigeria.
Yes.
Now, the truth is that you cannot be a follower of what you don't believe in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a follower, let's not forget every leader is a follower to another leader in another group.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so when we say the political leaders, they also are followers to other leaders in other entities. Mm-hmm. Now, so that loss of interest, I'm a management consultant, and gradually I begin to see that interest stretch even into private organizations.
Yes.
Now, there is a great divide between staff and employers these days.
Mm-hmm.
You hardly can transit staff to employers.
Hmm.
Now, so you begin to see the great divide. When people come into institution, all they want to do is mop whatever they can mop and fly off. Okay. Now, I'm consulting for a media house, and they went to cover a program in Ife. Now, so as part of thought, I asked them to just do a vox pop and, interview people in the surroundings and ask them if perchance there is life after death, would they want to come as Nigerians? Now, you need to see the disdain with which people were saying, God forbid. Not one person said, I want to come back as a Nigerian. Now, so it shows you that apathy will make it difficult for people to believe in the process. That's one. Two, the interest of Nigerians are far away from politics and political processes. Now, the things that interest Nigerians, when we do statistics on programs aired on TV, politics and political processes usually get the lowest viewership. Now, so if you look at it and juxtapose it with the recent constitutional amendment that was made, there was a fundamental bill a leader from the East presented. And what was the bill? That every office holder must send their wards to Nigerian schools, public schools. They cannot go to school abroad, and they cannot go to private schools. They must go to public schools. Now, you need to see how it was hushed at the chambers. Now, look at the bills that was thrown away for women's rights. I agree those bills were fantastic. They need to do it. But look at the pressure Nigerians are mounting that bill should be revisited. But this bill that makes office holders to go to public schools, their kids, and they should use public hospitals was quieting. And even the citizens, not one person, not one editorial in the papers captured it. Now, it shows the mentality of even the so-called people in leadership position, not knowing that they also are followers. Now, because for them, what they see with it is that, okay, if I send my kids to school as a public holder, it means I believe in the entity. Now, so when I was still a banker, I cannot open an account in another bank. I have to run my account in the bank where I work. Now, so we need, how do we address that issue of interest in the Nigerian project, in the Nigerian entity? And how do we present political process and political discussions in such a way that it will attract the ordinary Nigerian? Now, because if you look at it, even the church you are talking about, the members of church, how many people see themselves as part of the process to progress the church? So even the religious entity you are talking about, the public, the business entity, we are gradually losing that divide. So we need to find a way, how do we make them get interested, one, in the Nigeria entity, and two, how do we present these things in a likable form that they can tune to it? That's my question.
That was a long speech.
That was a long speech. It was a manifesto on its own.
It was a manifesto on its own.
There was one more person who wanted to ask a question. Is it Ernest Thomas?
Yeah.
Okay, please go ahead.
Good evening, Dr. Toye Sobande.
Make it short. Ernest, don't read any manifesto here. We want to close now.
Okay. Now, with thank God for you. I salute you, Pastor Ituah. This is different from what we've been hearing before, because you're not just feeding us with information. This is an interactive session. Now, this constitution, this 1999 constitution, to be honest, is a fraud. You know, all this bogus inflated figures, census figures of 200 million. You know, before Boko Haram and the banditry, you can drive in the north for miles. You don't see a single person. So to where all these 200 million they're talking about? This really is more of a suggestion. Really. Now, you know, the people prior to elections that vote, they're these toilet people that collect 5,000 naira. They're the majority of people who determine who. So my own suggestion really is that, you know, is it possible to pass a law with this funny constitution where only educated people are allowed to vote and those who are paying tax to the government? Because, I mean, it's just like one big jamboree and it's not fair. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ernest Father Unsi. Thank you very much. God bless you. Go ahead, Toye, please respond to the questions.
The aspect of trust, we cannot have any leadership that cannot be trusted. And I agree with you that Nigerians have lost the ability to trust. We don't trust the system. We don't trust anything. And that will be very difficult for anyone to govern those whom they cannot. Trust is one of the most important ingredients in leadership. And to build trust, it takes time. And building trust will only come from the behavioral inferences of those who present themselves for leadership. We are here today on this platform because we seem to trust Pastor Ituah and we trust his sense of judgment. He has a pedigree with us, and that's why we are here. So, whilst trust is an essential commodity, including in the Western culture that runs the credit system, is based on assumptive trust that they borrow you $5,000 and they expect you to pay back on your credit card. So I'm wondering, maybe that's why we have not been able to effectively run a credit system in Nigeria because of lack of trust. So trust has both economic value, not just only politically, it has both economic value. So it's something that has created a huge gap in our entire life. And I'll still say the same thing again. How then do we build trust? How then do we engender trust? It's not going to come from the top down. It's going to go from the bottom up. Why? The set of leaders that are there today will not be there tomorrow, some 10, 20 years down the line. Yes, some of us say we are recycling leaders, but the political system that recycles them, that produces them, is still existing. So we have to create a counter culture, a counter system, a new system and a structure. And that's why, because I believe the church folks, the religious folks, controls the largest population of people with the greatest amount of influence. For example, my mom turned 83 on March 2nd. Pastor Adeboye turned 80 on March 2nd. And I was watching the trajectory on social media of how people were posting Pastor Adeboye's pictures, greeting him, people taking personal pictures with him and now throwing out those pictures, and it was trending everywhere. That shows you how powerful Pastor Adeboye is, especially in the thinking of people, how much respect and honor he has. Imagine that powerful entity with that level of trust. How has he been able to accomplish that? It took time over the years. Some people didn't know Pastor Adeboye 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Some people, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. So anyone who wants to encourage any Nigerian to trust Nigeria, I will be very honest with you. It will be like pouring water on a hard rock. Why did I say that? I watched MP Abiola's daughter in a video recently, Dupe Abiola, pitching her business to the Dragons in the UK some years back. And she was talking about the fact that she came from an entrepreneurial family and how her father died and all of that. And I sat down watching that video and I recalled how many people, after the experience of Sarowiwa, Abiola, Alfred Rewane, and how they died and they were murdered. How many people want to sacrifice their family members and sacrifice their fathers and their parents anymore? It's difficult, very difficult. For those ideals, it will take a lot. I don't think anybody right now will want to go through. I could see the pain in the girl. I could see the anguish. I'm saying this to understand that trust is just easy to come by. We can't force it down on Nigerians. It's normal and it's natural that people will give up on Nigeria. I lost a friend based on an argument that Nigeria would change. We argued. I believe so much. I'm looking for him to apologize to him 30 years later. I search Facebook every now and then. I search Instagram. Sometimes I search. I'm looking for him just to apologize to him because we fought. We were young people over 30 years ago. I argued with him. He said Nigeria can never change. I said Nigeria will change. Stop prophesying badly to Nigeria because I believe so much in Nigeria. If you ask me, do I still believe in Nigeria? I will laugh. I will smile. But it does not take the fact that I don't believe in Nigeria. But do I trust things to be in Nigeria? I don't. I must admit. I'll be very honest with you. I'll be very honest with you. I cannot entrust my life into the Nigerian system. I cannot entrust the life of my family members. Nigeria happened to my father. My father would have lived longer than he lived. But a doctor who was supposed to be on duty was sleeping when he was supposed to be administering oxygen to my father. And they said there was no oxygen in the hospital. And we could have gotten, all my father needed to live was oxygen. And I was the only one with him. I have not recovered from that memory. I cannot entrust my entire life or the life of any family member to the Nigerian system. And you can't blame me for it. So that's why I'm very hesitant on the dimension you raised about helping Nigerians build trust in the political system. I just told you of the story of the Christian that I employed, paid him thousands of naira to do work for me. And he told me he went to church for 3 days and left my work. How do you wrap your head around that? So it will take a lot, sir. Let me leave that one at that. the last part, it still talks about the same thing. And I think as complex as our problem is, we need to simplify it. And Pastor Ituah rolled out something very fantastic that I think we should all rally around. We should rally around it. We should support it. We should provide our finances. You can, where you put your money, you will have emotional attachment to it, especially where the people in charge can be trusted. The same thing borders on the fact that let the African Leadership Group institute clubs, just like we used to have the Boy Scouts in schools, just like we used to have the Girl Scout, the Boys Brigade in schools. Let's institute this civic group in schools across board. Let's work towards instituting leadership and governance-related issues as part of the educational curriculum, both in the public and in the private schools. Then let's invest in it and believe that we will get the best 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line. I think that's the way to approach it. To change our followership, let the messages that come from our pulpits, let it emphasize on godly principles that when people see your light shining, then they will know that you are serving God. I have had people who told me point blank that looked at somebody and said, if you were to be anything called Christianity, I can't be a Christian. Looked at the person and said, that was very painful to hear. Painful to hear. Why do I say that? The way we do evangelism, transforming people's lives through the word of God, we can do evangelism, transforming the lives of Nigerians to uphold honesty, the right values. And these things are in our constitution, not only in our constitution, in our pledge, in our national anthem. But it's unfortunate, some of our senators cannot even recite it when asked. Now imagine those who are students who cannot even tell the meaning of BSc. They don't even know what BSc is. They say basic certificate diploma, all sorts of ridiculous things. So we need education. And I'm saying that because not for the students, the people who are even teaching students do not even know. They are not properly remunerated. So, and you expect them not to abuse the children. Their income level is not commensurate to the kind of lifestyle they will want for themselves and their children. And you expect them not to come up with all sorts of funny schemes on extracting money from parents. In my children's school in those days, a parent reported to me of how a teacher walked up to her and said, you know what? This curriculum that the school is teaching and the books, there are some books you need that will help the children that you can be teaching with the children at home. I would advise you should get it. Go and get it. These are the books. Then the parent said, oh, you know what? I don't know where to get this book. I don't have the time. Saying, don't worry, I can get it for you. I can get it. How much is the book? It's 40,000 naira, and collected 40,000 naira from the parent. No book. And there are different parents you collected the money from like that. And you will wonder, what would have pushed somebody like that towards something? It's not to justify our actions. You will see that the deprivation, the survival instinct is so tough, so hard on people that they will do anything, including compromising to survive financially. You cannot build an ideal leadership model when people are hungry. It will not be possible to encourage them to provide the kind of followership we expect from them. So what do? We need to solve the economic problems. We need to encourage entrepreneurship. There's an economic dimension to this assignment. It's three dimensions, actually. There's a political dimension, there's a social cultural dimension, there's an economic dimension to it. It's in my book, The Leadership Myth. It's there. I think it's in page 161, page 175. It's there. There's a political dimension to it. There's an economic dimension to it. There's a social cultural dimension to it. An hungry man will not listen to these stories and all this discussion you and I are having. They won't show up in this kind of forum. They won't show up. We are not even talking of people who have been emotionally abused in a toxic work environment. We are not talking about those class of people. We are talking about people who are deprived, who are poor. We cannot champion a followership agenda for them successfully that they will follow. The only thing we can do is to find ways of redeeming the economic situation through entrepreneurship, through encouraging entrepreneurship. and we'll take the money from that entrepreneurship activities, the taxes we pay, we call those who are in government to question to ensure that they create an enabling environment for our businesses to thrive. And we, in turn, we reinvest it back into developing the lives of the people. So that's why I said, let's just focus on the 20% who will be interested in this conversation. We can't drag the entire Nigerian populace with us. Let's just focus on the 20% and focus on that. Now, what's my recommendation for an ideal kind of leadership? I say it in the privacy of my room. I say it, my wife hears me, and she has begged me multiple times, never say this thing outside. Never say this thing outside. But I'm tempted to want to say it. I know she will query me. I think that the kind of leadership that Nigeria needs to move forward is a benevolent dictatorship. I think the kind of leadership that Nigeria needs to move forward, you may not agree with me, but it's my opinion, sir, is a benevolent dictatorship. And how do I know? Even God is a benevolent dictator, but yet he gives you a choice. He said, choose you this day whom you will serve. Choose. He gives us the power of choice. That's the benevolent dimension of him. But there's another dimension of reward and punishment. Is the lion and lamb. Anyone who wants to simplify the complexity of this country has to have a benevolent, authoritative dimension to him to emerge successfully in this current political contraption that we have. Now, I'm not suggesting that our democracy should be truncated for a dictator. No. I'm not suggesting that we should introduce military rule. No. I'm saying we need to evolve a system of government that is peculiar to the mental model of our people, that is peculiar to our culture, that recognizes the limitations of our culture, that recognizes the contraptions in our religious affinity and our ethnic affinity. And one of my other recommendations is this. We should promote collective identity much more than ethnic diversity. Ethnic diversity has not prospered us in any way, and it will not prosper us in any way. We need a collective identity. And to get a collective identity, we need to have a conversation around a vision and a destination and structure a plan through the African Leadership Group for the next 20, 30 years in the different sectors in Nigeria. We highlight a developmental plan. We campaign with it. We throw it out, such that the way we spend money on entertainment, on TV reality shows, billions that Nigerians are spending voting for people who waste their time sitting down doing nothing from morning till night, and we call that entertainment, and we spend millions of naira on that for people to just waste their lives away doing nothing, and they say they win, and they imagine the whole Nigerian network is fixated on it, and people are abusing themselves, they become enemies, and they call themselves fans. It shows the kind of priority Nigerians have. And I said that to say this: Nigerians themselves do not want Nigeria to develop. They like this chaos the way it is. Why? I learned from a movie that chaos is a ladder. Anywhere you see chaos, somebody is profiting from it. And because they are profiting from it, they will never allow sanity. They will never allow normalcy to come in. And you will have to contend against those people to be able to change the situation. So let's focus on the 20% that we can identify who share similar value systems with us, and we can make a progress, or we can make progress with Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sonny, I don't know if you have any words, any parting shots.
No, I think Dr. Toye has spoken very well. Thank you, Pastor Ituah. You can run with it. Thank you very much, Dr. Toye.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Toye. God bless you. My sister Kofo, I think we've run out of time. You put your hand up. You didn't mean to. Okay, all right. Thank you, Dr. Toye. It's nice having you. I hope you'll also register for the African Leadership Group.
I will, sir.
Be part of what we're doing. As I said, we're here to promote good values I think your suggestion on starting a club in different institutions is a very great one. We'll see if we can accommodate that within the budget and the resources we're able to raise. We want people to get involved in politics and leadership, join parties. We want to encourage you. We want you to support and sponsor those we believe in. We want to educate the electorate, if necessary, do door to door. We want to ensure, and we want to serve as a pressure group to ensure that governments do the right thing, and if necessary, serve even as a shadow government to provide ideas and research for government. So we shadow the government, we take them on different things that they're doing, and so on and so forth. Want to provide education and training for those who desire to go into leadership. Want to keep the engagements like this, having people like Toye come and talk to us, and different kinds of people. And if you know anybody who has great ideas about Nigeria and Africa and the African thing, I want to take this out of Nigeria, across Nigeria, into Africa and different parts of Africa. You know, want to mobilize people in the diaspora to also get involved and not to think that the situation in Africa is beyond them. These are the things we want to do. We have different committees. We have a bank account now that we're going to flash on the screen where people can send in their monies and their resources. And of course, we're going to be partnering with different agencies and different NGOs to try and work this out. These are bank accounts that we've opened. They're ready for business. Naira accounts, dollar account, pound sterling, and euro. So wherever you're in the world, including Russia and Ukraine, you can send money through to us. Like I said, we're partnering with different organizations. One of our strong sister partners, which I'm also president of, is the Rebuild Nigeria Initiative, Rebuild Nigeria Initiative, RNI, which will also be doing a launch very soon, maybe in May, somewhere in Abuja. And they have peace building, networking, connecting Nigerians together, and also encouraging Nigerians to get involved in leadership as part of their values, okay? And we're going to be promoting that very strongly soon. And the name of the account is actually Tri-Africa Empowerment Foundation, Tri-Africa Empowerment Foundation. The reason is very simple. To get anything Africa leadership or Nigeria, this and that, registered in Nigeria today is very difficult. They tend to put in all sorts of barriers. Maybe they're a bit worried, they're anxious, and so on and so forth. So it's called the Tri-Africa Empowerment Foundation. And those are the various accounts that you can send money to. Which bank is this, Olu? GT Bank, GT Bank, GT Bank. You didn't put the name of the bank there. GT Bank. Okay, all those accounts. Thank you again very much, my dear brother, Dr. Toye. Your background seems very similar to mine, very strong parentage, who gave you very strong values. And all that trouble you are causing in the University of Ife, God will forgive you, you know. I saw one of my sisters when you were talking about Kiniko, Lugo, she was nodding her head and smiling. I think she was probably part of that trade, Mrs. Fashide Mishade. She's based in South Africa. She was smiling so proudly. I think maybe you were causing confusion in Ife at that time. So God bless you all. Next week, we have a very, very interesting person coming, a young lady that I have met and who has taken the bull by the horns. And in this season of liberating women and making sure that we can take the system on, she's a lady that has really come forth with strength. Khadija Omo Bolanle Okunu Lamidi, running for president of Nigeria. She's going to be speaking to us on running for office. So 5 o'clock Thursday next week, let's all try and be here. You wanted to say something to her? Yes.
Oh, I spoke at a forum where she attended, and the last I checked, she was running for Senate. I was even going to find a way of reaching out. I wanted to offer her my services for free, and I intend to do that for all political aspirants who want to run for office. I want to help them develop their strategy documents and their strategic propositions towards running for office. So I want to recommend that for anyone who is running for office. A lot of people have put comments here. I'm not able to read your comment because I'm speaking and all of that, but they can reach out to me. Some people sent numbers asking for my number and email. They can find a way of reaching out to me. But for political office aspirants, I'll be willing to help people develop their strategic objectives and also provide some consultancy services to them for free towards this. Thank you, sir.
Very good. You and I will be talking very soon. And I will let Khadija know that she has free service from you. She probably is on the platform somewhere. And if she's not, she'll be here to next week. So if you don't mind to be here also, and I can connect both of you.
Yes, sir.
At some
Yes,
okay. Sir. Thank you. I want to thank everyone who took part tonight. God will bless you all. God will give you sweet night's sleep and wake all of us tomorrow. And whether we like it or not, Nigeria will be great again. And God will give us great leaders. And God will give us inspirational people like Dr. Toye to continue to encourage us. Amen. God bless you all. Have a very good night. My brother Bore, thank you. Great to see you. Ruben, great to see you. God bless you all.
Can I give my email? Someone is asking for my contact details.
Please go ahead. Go ahead and give it.
My email is toyesobande@stevensleadership.com. Toye Sobande, one word. There is no H in my Sobande, at stevensleadership.com or toyesobande@gmail.com. toyesobande@gmail.com. Then my social media handle is Toye Sobande on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, Emmanuel Toye Sobande. So my email is toyesobande@gmail.com. toyesobande@gmail.com. Those of us who wrote their comments and asking one, I can't read it now, but you can email me. I'll answer your questions. I can provide my contact details. But my social media is Toye Sobande on Instagram, on Twitter. My LinkedIn is Emmanuel Toye Sobande, and on Facebook, Toye Sobande. Thank you. There's no H in my Sobande. It's Toye, TOYESOBANDE @gmail.com. Thank you, sir.
God bless you all. Have a good night. God bless you. See you same time next week.
Bye-bye,
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
God bless you all. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Bless you,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
bless
you,
you.
Sister,
God bless you.
thank you. God bless
Thank you so much.
Bless you.
How's my brother? I hope he's well.
Bless you.
Long
Yes,
time.
he
Tell
is.
you long
Thank
time.
you.
Good
Yes,
night.
he is.
Good night.
We're